Good morning, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Speaking Truth to Power, the new progressive voices of the Midwest. I am Denise Kirchoff.
And I'm Dr. Nakpangi Thomas. And we have with us.
You're watching.
Oh, yeah. You're watching Speaking Truth to Power on WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world, streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. Please join the conversation. Um, our lines are going to be open, so you can call us at 313-355-6018. And please like, follow, subscribe, and all of that on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
Right. And today we have Mikkel Goodman with us. Mikkel is actually running for Pontiac City Council. And if he wins, well, let's just say when he wins, he will be one of the youngest members ever to sit on City Council, among one of the youngest members, which in itself will become a historic event. And Mikkel, for those of you who don't know, actually lives in Pontiac. He's lived there most of his life. And he actually teaches in the Pontiac Public Schools. So, Mikkel, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you plan on doing?
Yeah, so I am a lifelong Pontiac resident, minus about 4 months when I lived in California. But yeah, lifelong Pontiac resident, 21 years old. So actually, if I get elected, I'd be the youngest city council person in Pontiac history. Actually, the youngest elected official in Pontiac history. And I do teach. I teach at my old high school, my alma mater, Arts and Technology Academy of Pontiac. But to go to your question, some things that I would do is really focusing on the youth and younger generations of our city. And I don't just mean in terms of like recreation centers. I mean, our city has a massive problem with affordable housing. It's probably my biggest area of concern. So making sure that we are holding apartment management companies accountable, making sure that we're holding slumlords and negligent landlords accountable for not maintaining their property, as well as price gouging, what is supposed to be affordable housing in the city is one of my biggest things I want to tackle, because so many young people in the city do eventually have to move out on their own. And in a climate where most people here don't have the money to buy a house, as many people say, for cheap, or to pay $1,000 a month for a mediocre apartment, we have to address that issue if we're going to keep young people in our city and also bring young people like students from local colleges into our city. So that's probably my biggest concern.
Right, because my understanding is that the average income in the city is like what, maybe the high teens, low 20s or something like that. So about maybe $14,000 to about maybe $27,000 a year.
Yeah, so actually I fit perfectly into that category. I make $21,000 a year.
Right.
And I pay half of my income every month on rent. And that's not including, utilities, food, car insurance, which of course in Michigan is one of the highest in the nation.
Right.
You can't afford it.
It's probably more than your rent.
Yeah. So it's like the situation of like most people in Pontiac. Let's say like the median income is $21,000 if we look at certain numbers. That means half of Pontiac's population makes less than what I make. Mm-hmm. And I'm paying $700 a month. So we can only imagine those who are paying for, more expensive housing, because I live in one of the cheaper apartment buildings in Pontiac. There are people who have it worse who are making less money than me. Now, of course, there's Section 8 and different assistances to help them. But for people who don't qualify for them, you can only imagine how hard it is.
Right. Now, over the the past 5 years, you have really become very involved in the Democratic Party. You are actually the vice chair of the Young Dems. And you also serve on the committee as the chair for Oakland County for the Democratic Party, correct?
So to be more specific, I am the committee chair for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee for the Oakland County Democratic Party.
Okay.
But yes.
Now, how did you actually, because you're only 21. So how did you get involved in politics, and what made you decide to run for office?
And one more question along with that, if we haven't bombarded you with enough. My understanding is you were also in the Progressive Caucus too, during when we were all hoping and praying that Bernie would be our new president.
Yeah, so I guess I'll answer that last one first. So I helped out with the Progressive Caucus a lot. I am technically a member, and I did a lot of background stuff to help out. But I mainly stuck with YDM because there was a lot of work that needed to be done by the Young Democrats, and I had faith in the Progressive Caucus to be able to do a lot of the good work. But to answer the other ones, I got involved in politics, I say like officially around 2015, 2016. It happened, of course, with most young people when Bernie ran the first time. And I was sitting in my political science class back in high school, and we were watching the Democratic debates. And I'd say that was my awakening point, because growing up, I went from being like super conservative, from my grandma being like a Bush and Reagan supporter, to being a conservative Democrat by the time I reached like higher grade school. And then once I got to high school, it's like, oh, none of that made sense. Let's go for, what is going to actually help the people. And that's how I got involved. And from that point forward, I kind of got involved in different campaigns and different organizations. Between 2016 and 2018, I got involved with DSA when I lived in California. And then in 2019, I got asked to be the communications director for the Young Democrats of Michigan. And from that point forward is where everything kind of branched from. So I went from being on one executive board to being on 7 in the span of about 2 years.
That's what happens in these parties. You get involved, and next thing you know, you are involved in 10 different committees, and you're like, wait, how did this happen?
Yeah. No, luckily for me, like a lot of the work overlaps in some of them, so it's not extremely stressful, but at times it does get really rough.
Right.
Now, explain to our viewers and our listeners how you think your activism is going to actually transfer over into holding, let's just call it what it is, political power. And because if I'm not mistaken, you're running in District 3, right?
Yeah, so I'm running in Pontiac's 3rd District for City Council. So activism is actually extremely important, especially for my race out of all the ones in the city, because let's look at a couple of different things. First of all, Pontiac has about 45,000 registered voters.
Right.
Of that, about 11% of them voted in the last city election.
That's very low.
That's a very low turnout.
It's an extremely low turnout. And it makes it worse because my district has one of the lowest, if not the lowest, voter turnout anywhere in the city. Last election for local races, just over, I believe like 420 people voted total in my district, when there are thousands of voters here. And a lot of that's based on like the demographics, and also that people feel disconnected and not listened to. I mean, I believe that I have the most apartment complexes anywhere in the city. I have the most diverse district, and probably, I believe the city's highest concentration of Hispanic, Latino, Latina voters that are simply just not paid attention to by the current council person. So making sure that I'm actually showing up at the door to actually address the issues of the people who live here, and not just wanting to win office. Because to go back to one of the questions that you asked earlier, why did I run? I didn't want to run. That's the thing. I feel that the best people who are in office are the people who don't want to run, because they don't have that overarching goal of like, I want to reach this office. I have planned my entire life. It comes out of necessity. And when you live in a city your entire life, where from when you were conscious of the things that surround you to when you were actually able to do something about them, and you see nothing substantively change, and you just watch your city in decline, you have to begin to question, well, what's going on? Why are people not fixing this? And the fact that I was able to reach 21 and realize no one is addressing this, someone has to, I guess it has to be me. And that's kind of where we fall to. And then it kind of comes, okay, how do I get people who aren't involved? And that's where the activism part comes in, because making sure that you can get people to come behind the mission that you're pushing and actually help along with it and help, fight for themselves is extremely important.
I agree with that. So it sounds like you're meeting people where they are. And right now, their present city council member doesn't seem to be doing that, because if you were, you would be at their home. You would be in their neighborhood. you would be talking to them and addressing the concerns. And I can imagine with that many, let's just say, rental income properties, apartment complexes, what is there for the kids to do in the area? I mean, is there like a why? Are there outreach programs? Are there community organizations that have maybe stepped in and say, you know what, let's start like a gardening initiative, let's start a farming initiative, let's start a STEM initiative for these kids in the community? I mean, you're a teacher, so you understand
Right.
there is a desperate need for our children to be busy in the community they live in, and a desperate need for adults in that community to step up and say, you know what, we value you and we have some things for you to do and we're going to help you on the way. Is that available in your community right
Right.
now?
And I'm also wondering, do you have a lot of recreational centers and parks for the kids to go out and be kids and
Yeah.
not be trapped in the house and just on all this social media and really not engaging with one another? So what is that like? What is the quality of life like for the residents in the third district in Pontiac?
So there is a lot to unpack there. The moment that you said
Sure.
rec center just gave me like flashbacks. So the city does have parks. We do have a rec center. We do have programs that are created by people in the community who have decided to pick up the slack because, due to Pontiac going into receivership and having an emergency manager, we lost a lot of things that the city once owned. And we have parks and these apartment complexes. We have things to do, but they're not where they should be. They're not to the quality that we should expect if we're going to have our kids participate in these things.
So I mean,
Um,
it's almost like not having anything if the equipment is not up to standard where the children can use it. I mean, that's pointless to have structures there that cannot be used. So what I'm listening to what you're saying you have these things, however, they can't be used.
and
So
yeah, in some areas, so like some of the parks have been like redone and they look a lot nicer. But then we have to address the issue of safety, which to me is not to be answered with cops. It's just to be answered with having actual staff and creating a city where people actually care about the quality of things and care about the children in their city, which a lot of people do. It's just making sure that the rest of them who are kind of making it difficult do as well. When we move on to like the rec center, for example, so Pontiac has one. It's the unfortunate part about it is it exists on the far corner of town where there is no public transportation. The city doesn't provide transportation to it, and it's pretty much in the rich white area of Pontiac.
mm,
Wow.
That if I wanted to get there, there is no connection of buses I can take. I'd have to take one bus to the complete other side of town and then walk from Woodward to nearly like Telegraph to get to the rec center.
wow, that's
So
over 5 miles.
right. And the rec center is meant for children. So I don't think that you want a child to ride a bus
No.
to Woodward and then walk 5 miles through neighborhoods to get to a rec center, to then have to do the same thing unless they can get a ride, which leads to Pike's transportation issue.
Right.
And now we don't have our rec center's lease just went up because city council, and I think rightly so, did not want to renew the lease for the current property where it stands. They want to move it to somewhere else. I believe it should be somewhere more central to the city where it can be reached easier by public transportation and by people who may have to walk or catch a ride. So it's like addressing these issues and actually fighting for our kids a little bit better rather than just giving them something and hoping that it works.
Right. And
Now,
how about more than one rec center? I mean, how about that?
because
So
Pontiac is a large community. Now, have you gone to the constituents that would be voting for you and saying, hey, look at what our kids don't have and look at what we're possibly trying to do? Now, if you were to try to do that, how would you go about it? Because I'm sure the people in your district, I'm sure this is something they want for their children. I mean, they're human beings. They want those open spaces. They want those play spaces. They want places where their children can go. Can you explain to us how becoming a city council member, you would actually enact something like that?
Mhm. And before you do that, ladies and gentlemen, you are watching Speaking Truth to Power on WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world, streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. Please like, share, follow, and subscribe. If you would like to become a sponsor or advertise on WJZZ, please email us at WJZZCoolTVofficial@gmail.com and join us on Sundays for this month, every Sunday from 3 to 9 p.m. at the Backyard Boogie located at 19730 Roston Street. And you are watching Speaking Truth to Power with Denise Kirchoff and myself, Dr. Panji Thomas, and our special guest, Mikhail Goodman.
All right, Mikhail, answer our question, because pretend we live in your area. Now I want to know, what are you going to do for my kids? How are my kids going to get to a rec center? How are they going to be able to get out and play, join a t-ball team or a softball team? Or what are you going to bring to us if we put you in office?
Right. So one of the things that knocking on doors, that is probably people's primary concern, because in apartment complexes, you typically have children. And so one of the arguments that I made is that, one, I agree that the city council should be moving the location. And there are a couple different locations in the city that are at our disposal that we could, use in terms of a rec center that the city owns. So then it kind of comes down to, do we have the quality over quantity approach from the get-go? So, for example, there is Purdue, I want to say elementary, but I believe it went more than elementary, but it closed when I was way younger. It's where I went to preschool. That building, from what the plan shows, costs about $35 million to renovate completely, but it's a gigantic building that has really every resource that a rec center would need in a more affluent community. Massive gym, all these different rooms that could also then be rented out to supplement the cost of the building. It has a pool. It has all this outdoor open space. It's the perfect place for a rec center, but it costs a larger amount of money that may take longer to do. There's also the option of having, some smaller rec centers. Like there's one on, I believe it's like DeWalt, which is a much smaller building, much smaller than the current rec center. But doing that would allow us to have one on maybe more than one side of the city. So it's one about figuring out what the constituents want. Do they want one that's central to the city that may take a little bit longer, but is much better quality and is owned by the city, not being rented out, with the amenities that our children will need and hopefully will last until those kids have children, and so on and so forth. But it's making sure that we are actually fighting for a rec center that benefits the community, not for one that's just, we have one. So making sure that my constituents, and also really all Pontiac residents, have a say-so in where, when, and how we do it.
Now, I'm sort of curious. When you get into office, would you actually pursue planning information? Take in bids, take a look at it, go to your constituents and say, hey, in a rec center, what are you looking for? Because if I lived in, an apartment, and I have 3 kids right now, one of the things I would be looking for is, okay, can my kids get some tutoring? Like you say, the school seems to be set up classroom style. That's okay. Can we get some internet access? If they're classrooms, I'm sure that can be done. Is there a possibility, and I think you understand this as a teacher, is there a possibility to actually take your teaching sort of almost like to internet into the schools, where, like, if a kid is sick and misses an assignment, if you have a rec center, and if the rec center's internet is connected with the school, where you could possibly go into a room and get online and sort of just maybe do a virtual redo of your class because you're sick. Is there an ability to set up like almost like a daycare situation or an after school program? And I'm sure, like a lot of communities, I'm sure you guys probably have big brothers and big sisters, in the area. I'm sure you guys have YMCA. I mean, are you talking to the parents about, if we use this school, we can partner with other people? Because I understand, like you say, if it's a school, you're right, everything is totally set up. Now, what has the response from the parents been in your district, or just the people in your district, about the rec centers?
Well, so the thing is, they want one. So the hard part about the rec center is that there are many people in Pontiac who don't know that we have one.
Right.
And simply for the fact is, it's nowhere where people can normally get to. Therefore, it's nowhere in the forefront of anyone's mind. So to answer your question, we should be talking to them, asking them what they want and what they need. And also, as a rec center, that's kind of the whole point of having these programs. I mean, for us to not have them, to not partner with different existing organizations to help provide things for our students, for our children, it makes no sense that we don't.
Right.
So if we have this building, one of the things that we should be doing is providing a bunch of different after-school programs, especially academic ones, that relate to our kids' performance in school. Now, that'll probably be much easier with the Pontiac School District rather than some of the charters that we have in the city. But hopefully we can create a partnership with them too to have them be involved in this plan as well. But yeah, one of the important things regarding this, hopefully this doesn't get decided and voted upon before the new council people take office, but making sure that, yes, we do go to the residents and ask them, where should we do this at? Holding public forums, for example, would be an easy way to do this. Hey, tell us what you want. Tell us where you want it. How do you want us to do this? Okay, if we want to do it that way, it may take a little bit longer. Is that fine? Making sure that we're actually trying to build a rec center and really a community that actually is meant for and caters to the people of our city. That's the most important thing when it comes to this.
And you also, I know you're passionate about using renewable energy. Tell me a little bit about that, and maybe not all of your plan, because we don't want everyone to know what you twist up your sleeve, but we do want to know what's your plan and how you use renewable energy.
And how would this be something that's good for your district and your community?
Right.
So the first thing I'll say is jobs. So our country needs to move forward, especially in terms of what's going to be coming down, like regulation-wise. We need to have more green infrastructure. That's the first thing. Which, luckily in Pontiac, there is a green infrastructure certifier, one of the only in the state of Michigan, who is willing to train people for these green infrastructure jobs. And that's important because, as many people know, Pontiac's main industry used to be the car industry. That's not the case anymore. Most of those jobs left. They do not apply to Pontiac residents anymore. So finding a new industry in which people can be trained and certified in that can bring actual economic wealth to to the people in the city, especially, and not just the businesses, is extremely important. And then, green infrastructure covers everything from making sure that we have permeable, sustainable concrete that, better handles rainwater, restoring natural water cycles and not just pumping everything into the sewer system. But also making sure that we begin to actually push the city forward in terms of technology. One of my goals that I really want to happen in the near future is to make downtown Pontiac, at the very least, completely sustainable on its own. So that includes things like finding renewable energy sources for downtown and making sure that from that point, we can begin to start helping the residents who maybe own their homes or helping some of the apartment complexes begin to start putting themselves on more renewable forms of energy and start decreasing the city as a whole's energy consumption in their bills, but also the residents. Because again, it's one of the things that we have to move forward eventually. I would rather Pontiac be on the forefront of it rather than having to play catch up like we've always had to do.
Right. And Michigan we are the Great Lakes state. So what are your thoughts about using water turbines to help power our energy?
So that's a discussion that needs to be had in terms of, one, is this a statewide thing? Is this a Metro Detroit situation? Or are we going to try to do this specifically in Pontiac and Oakland County? And then that runs into the question of how do we work with the Water Resources Commissioner? Because unfortunately, Pontiac doesn't have complete control over everything that runs through our city. I mean, not just including, the fire department and the police department, but there are just so many things that we just simply don't have control over due to having an emergency manager at one point who sold off everything.
Right. It's almost similar to Detroit and what happened with our emergency management. So, we don't have control of our water anymore. We used to own our water source, but now we know it's privately owned.
Right.
But
one of the things I'm sort of concerned about, just me personally, is the residents. Now, everybody wants to live where it's great, where everything is like truly, accessible. You don't want to live in the middle. You don't want
Right.
part of your area to be a food desert.
Right.
You don't want some residents paying extremely high water bills when they live in an area where we know that the income is lower, and because the infrastructure might actually be lacking. Now, when people come to you and talk to you about that, what are you saying to them?
So one of the few things there are some things that I say more publicly than I do for others. So when it comes to water, water shutoffs should not be a thing.
Thank you.
Water is necessary to life. Under no circumstance, especially from the poorest people and the most disadvantaged people in our communities, should we be saying, "Hey, you're too poor to wash your clothes. You're too poor to take a shower in the morning." That's not a thing that we should be saying to them. We should not have water shutoffs. And luckily, due to Oakland County being pretty good in terms of making sure that they kind of ended water shutoffs during the COVID pandemic, we need to expand that. No one should be having their water shut off, especially not in the city of Pontiac. So that's one of the key things. The other thing is addressing our city infrastructure, because I guarantee you that our pipes are just as old and as terrible as cities like Detroit and like Flint. There's no question about it. So we need to also begin addressing that and making sure that our water infrastructure is up to date. Because for us to begin, doing all these things, like, for example, there are a lot of developers who are interested in the city of Pontiac, which let's not even jump into the conversation about gentrification. But if we're going to sit here and have, all of this new development with all these new water systems and all these new pipes, explain to me why the majority of Pontiac residents who live in the rest of the housing that you're not developing are having to sit here and deal with horrible water quality. Because I can guarantee you that even the water quality in my building is something that's detrimental to my health. So we have to make sure that we address that.
Now, are you going to be looking at something like, I understand some cities, probably about the size of Pontiac or lesser known in California, sort of did this thing. Developers wanted to come in, and they did a thing like Detroit did. Okay, but you have to be from our area. You have to hire a residence. We understand that you have to put in new water systems and new piping, but along with that, you will also you will get a bigger tax break down the road. But along with that, you will be responsible for helping us do the repiping and the retooling. And I think it was like literally within a 20-mile radius. And because those people would be the people that would be coming to your new construction, your new building, your new whatever, your new, let's just say you're building a big store. Those are the people that are going to be actually spending money with you. So if you're going to be doing that, part of your tax break is going to be that you're going to have to help pay for our infrastructure, for the community surrounding that will be supporting you in the long run. So is that something that's possible? Because I'm starting to hear of a lot of communities that are doing that, because they know it's also, the city and the state's responsibility. But let's be realistic. It's really expensive.
Yeah. So do you think that business should be held responsible for a portion of some of this reconstruction and infrastructure when they come in to do business?
So actually, that's a thing I've recently just heard of from you, and it sounds like an amazing idea, because when you think about it, these people are profiting off of an area. Now, be it if they are from the area, it's kind of hey, now you're building up the area that you live in as well. Especially when it comes to outside builders, it's like, yes.
Well, and
you're not,
most of these big infrastructures are not coming from people who live within that city. Let's
Right.
just really be honest with that.
Right.
So we're not talking about locals who are coming in to do small business, because that's what locals usually do. They do small business. We're talking about big business.
Oh, you mean like the Amazon plant that's in my city?
Exactly.
Well,
Yes, exactly.
One of the things that you tend to run into is that let's just use Amazon, for example. We're not picking on Amazon, but when they come in and they do repiping and retooling and they, tap into the water system, it tends to slow down the water in other communities within a 10 to 20-mile radius, because now they have the new systems, which are now backing up and slowing down the old systems because they've installed the new pipes, new shutoff valves, new runoff valves.
Right.
where the older systems don't have it, and you're putting pressure on those systems. You're losing water pressure. You're actually losing quality. The water has to be tested more. And all of this tends to fall back on your community to
Right.
pay for the stepped up water testing that now has to be done because, and I don't pretend to understand how municipal water runs, but there's a backup in that. It's sort of like in your house. Where if you live in an apartment, like if the guy upstairs has like the brand new washer, dryer, had the brand new toilet put in, when it runs and you turn yours on, all of a sudden you're seeing a trickle. So there seems to be a point where, there's almost like a backlash in the water or a backwash, if you want to call it. And
That sounds gross.
right, but you know what I'm saying? But the cost of finding that out and trying to figure that out falls on the city. And of course, you want new people, you want businesses, you want to be able for people to work locally so they're not traveling 40 miles from their home or 100 miles from their home and spending less time with their family. But in the same time, when these businesses come in, they put a strain on the system. So I think what a lot of communities are starting to look at, they're like, we're fine with that, but you have to understand you will long term affect everyone. And we have to be able to try to make the playing field even.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, you are watching Speaking Truth to Power on WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world, streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Please like, follow, share, and subscribe. If you would like to become a sponsor or advertise on our show or any of our stations, shows rather, please do so by emailing us at WJZZ cooltvofficial@gmail.com and join us each and every Sunday for the Backyard Boogie from 3 to 9 p.m. I think I hear somebody yelling at me, but from 3 to 9 p.m. at 19730 Roston Street right here in Detroit.
But and thank you for that, Nakpangi. And one of the things you have to look at is that this does change everybody's life.
Mhm.
And but you're also bringing the people who you inadvertently, because no one does this on purpose, inadvertently that you're harming. These are the same people that you want to shop. So I think this is one of the new things that we're looking at, because if you look at part of the new infrastructure bill that Biden's administration has proposed, a lot of these upgrades are actually included. So are
But
you?
Denise, I want to say when businesses come in, they have to do a needs and risk assessment as well. So they do know some of the issues that face the surrounding community when they come in. So I don't want to um, give them any slack because they do and they are aware of issues that impact the community when they move in because they really have to do that research.
Have your constituents said something about that? It's like we need more jobs in our community.
So, right. So let's separate these things for a second. You're completely correct. So the big concern, and I bring this up, is when we talk about Amazon, for example, in the city. I know very few people who know someone that work in that Amazon building. There are a lot of people who simply don't. So now we get into this conversation of, okay, well, we brought this new business here and we're supposed to have jobs from this. Why don't we have them? So then it kind of comes down to, okay, how do we ingrain it into the system that these new businesses have to do these things to help out our community, and we're not just hoping on their benevolence that they will somehow gift us some new jobs. So it's making sure that we're actually putting it at forefront, like, hey, if we're going to help you out by letting you be here and giving you these things, we need something in return. Not want, not hope. We need.
This Detroit actually does that when new
Let,
business comes.
let me tell
They
you, that's
actually
some
require that.
yes, and it's some bullshit because I'm going to tell you these companies will come in, still not hire their quota, pay the fines because they're making billions of dollars, so they don't care about paying a little measly fine because they're not adhering to their contract. So I don't even want to hear about money and contracts and what they should be doing because they have this in place and they're still not doing it. Just
See,
like with you all have, I'm quite sure you all already have something where they have to hire so many people within the city of Pontiac.
Now, how would you make
you
it
have to get.
that's enforced?
So you have, for one, that's the key thing. You have to enforce these things and also make the punishments actually hurt for people. Because let's not pretend, again, because we're all people of color here, fines only affect poor people.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It means that things are only illegal if you cannot afford it. So we have to begin making these fines and these disciplinary actions actually begin to hurt businesses who are not doing their part, whether that be increasing the amount of them or putting other things in place to be like, okay, we've given you so many years to do this, get out.
Exactly.
Or just hit them where it hurts the most, their tax breaks. Because out their tax breaks, what would be the profit point of coming there? I think when you find out what their profit point is and where their tax needs to be, that's where the tax breaks come in. That's why communities do this negotiation. And I'm sure if I was in a community and you came to me and said, you know what, when new business moves in, if they don't do this, we automatically in their tax breaks and we automatically start escalating their taxes every cycle. And that to me seems what hurts a business the most, because it has to be profitable where they're not paying, because we all know, because we've just seen it on TV in the last couple of days, when you're wealthy or a wealthy business, you don't pay taxes.
I mean, I guarantee you that between the three of us, we've paid more taxes than Amazon.
Right. Exactly.
So I mean, it's figuring out how to make punishments actually begin to hurt, and I mean that also applies again for my thing. I'm a really big proponent of affordable housing. When it comes to like slumlords and negligent landlords in the city, okay, we're actually going to start enforcing these things upon you. We're going to start enforcing these fines, and again, begin to create escalating punishments. That way, it's like either you do this or you risk losing something. You know, that loss aversion is a very big motivator for some people. And I know it applies to businesses as well. So making sure that the thing is, good businesses that actually benefit the community should not be afraid of coming to Pontiac. Right. If you're going to sit here and do the work to actually build up our community the way that it needs to be done, none of these things will ever apply to you.
Right.
But it's for people who come in and try to take, you know, our land, our resources, and give nothing in return, is where we begin to have to put our foot down and say, either you do this or this is going to hurt you.
Right. And it seems to me a new way of colonizing. You know, this all seems really familiar, but just wrapped in a different package.
Right. Well, I talk often. So a little fun fact, I love Angela Davis. So there's a reason I will find a way to drop her anytime I say anything.
Right.
we talk about she talks about the ever-changing presence of racism. It does not exist the same way that it did during the civil rights movement or during the early 20th century. It changes. Colonization and imperialism change as well. We have moved from the old standard way of, you know, invading other countries. I mean, we still do that. But also now we have, you know, businesses who do the same thing. Oh, we're going to go into this majority minority community who doesn't have a lot of money, buy up all their land and all their resources, and then eventually push them out. Mm-hmm. And that's when we lead into gentrification. Because gentrification is, let's be real, is a form of colonization.
And what I like to call it, along with gentrification, when businesses come in and do that, and the first thing they do is to our communities and say, oh, we're going to help you. We're going to offer you jobs. They come in and what I am, as of today, right now, 10:39 on this show, forming a new word. I am calling it brown washing, because what it is it's washing us with brown people. We're going to go into these communities of brown people, which include Blacks, Hispanics, Asian, Native Americans, everyone who's not white. Eastern. So Middle Eastern. So we're going to go in and brown wash them. We're going to tell them exactly what they want to hear. We're going to tell them, you know what, we're going to be out in the streets with you for Black History Month when Black Lives Matter needs us. But in our bottom line, we are really, truly not going to support you. I call that brown washing, because you come in and wash us with all these great things you're going to do for us. And when the moment is gone and the cameras are turned off and we knock at your door for jobs, you're like, okay, you're not qualified. But you can find all these other qualified people that are not brown outside of where we live, but you're bringing them into where we live every day,
from
and you're
another
giving
state.
So
let's add that we have a lot of expats here who weren't originally from Michigan, who've now come in and acquired these high-level jobs where they're saying that local people aren't qualified. So we really need to look at that. For you, as someone running for city council, would you have a plan for that? How would you address that particular issue?
Well, right. Because one of the things that we run into with those situations specifically when we get these new businesses is that oftentimes before they even move here, they've already figured out who they want to work there.
Exactly.
Right.
They've had them move in a year or two before.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh yeah, we're hiring Pontiac residents who we had moved there a year ago.
Right.
And so it's also making sure that, crafting ordinances and policies that specifically lay out like, oh no, we need you to hire people who have been here for X amount of years, who have this much tied to the community. Pretty much like you have to hire people who have been here, not people who have newly moved here suspiciously. Now again, there may be some right. Now there's some people who like, hey, you recently moved to Pontiac and you happen to find this job. No problem with you. But it's like when a company, let's say company A, has 100 employees moving to Pontiac a year beforehand, and now they open their new business, and now they now work there. Mm-hmm. That's a problem. So making sure that the city actually has the ordinances and stuff in the charter and in our contracts to make sure that these businesses aren't screwing us over. And then also having the people in the departments to enforce these things. That's the key part. It's great having all these things in the books, but there's no one there to actively enforce them and to actually hold people accountable. It's all for nothing.
Right.
And then we need to take, remove ourselves from crafting policy and crafting ordinances. We also have to have elected officials who are willing to use the bully pulpit, to use the power of their position to hold people accountable. Mm-hmm. Okay, I got elected. That's not my problem anymore. That's not my fight. I like their money. That's cool. No, that's not what we're doing. Oh, so a couple years ago, I let you move into the city. Looking at this report, you've done absolutely nothing. So now I'm going to fire blast you on every single occasion that I can until you get the point that you're not doing what you need to do. Now, if you decide to change your actions, cool, great. I appreciate that. You still didn't do it in the first place. Or I'm going to find some way to make you do what you were supposed to do. But the thing is, we need to stop letting people get away with essentially gaslighting. It's corporate gaslighting.
Oh my gosh, yes it is.
Right. Now, I'm sort of curious about something. If the voter turnout is low, what have you done to make sure that people are going to get out and vote? Because people, what tends to happen is people just keep voting for the same person because they see the name that they're familiar with on the ballot. And I think we all need to be aware of what's going on in our community. People have to be made aware that, when you elect somebody, you need to be able to call them on the phone. They need to pick up. They need to get back to you. That is their job. You are not bothering them because that is truly why you were hired. When you are elected, you are a hired official. Besides being an elected official, we have hired you to do a job. And if I hire you and you work for me, I need to be able to reach you. But how do you, because I feel like voter turnout is really low in areas where people don't feel like they're being heard, where they don't think they count or they matter.
Yeah, so you actually do need a strong GOTV plan. And I believe whatever people, and I know this to be true, whoever you get registered will vote for you.
So how do you see going about that? Are you working on voter registration? Because we just need voter registration to be higher than it is. Mm-hmm. People need to know their vote
they're
counts.
Registered. They're just not going out to vote. So we have to get them to the polls.
Yeah. So luckily for me, I have one of the best field directors on the planet. So I think you two may know who she is. But being on doors, let's be real. The way that you win elections is by you meeting people where they are.
Right.
I knock doors. I show up in the community. There's a reason why one of the apartment complexes here already have said, most of them are like, yeah, no, we're definitely voting for you. Because one issue that we run into is the incumbent, luckily for her, unluckily for the people who actually live here, has had no real challenger since she's been elected. She has been in office for 12 years. Wow. When you have someone who can just run with impunity and never have to worry about losing, they stop caring.
Yeah, and that's the problem that I'm seeing a lot, especially here with Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb County.
And Washington.
And we have a lot of these officials that have been seated for 10 years or more. They have become complacent and they're not doing what they were elected to do. And the people within that city or township have gotten so complacent that they're just marking off their names instead of saying, well, what has this person really done in the last 10 years? Who's new that's coming in that can possibly do more or improve on this? And sometimes you have good elected officials. Like when I ran for Wayne County Commission, I ran against Jill Ware, for God rest her soul. But she had done a good job, but she needed a fire lit under her ass so she can start doing what she used to do. And she was able to do that. So sometimes we do need these elected officials to have people run against them so that they can start doing what they used to do, or to get them out to get fresh blood in there because they have those fresh new ideas and they can't implement them, such as yourself. So, what are your thoughts on that? I know I just said a mouthful.
So you're completely right. In terms of like people need a fire lit under their ass. There's no question about it. You do the best work under pressure. And so one of my good allies here, she's a great person, Tamika Ramsey, always brings up this point of elections are job reviews.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Every 4 years, we decide to review you. If we don't like the performance that you have, we fire you. And by firing you means we vote you out.
Exactly.
We need to do that more often. I told someone this the other day at an event, bully your politicians. If they're not doing their job, bully your politicians until they do it correctly.
Right.
So, for example, we have a lot of registered voters here. They just simply don't turn out. So it's actually making sure that we meet them where they are and go into the community and ask them, what do they need? When I have one of the largest Hispanic populations anywhere in the city, I guarantee you most of them don't vote, because if you have an incumbent for 12 years who hasn't knocked on your door, because that's the thing that happens. I have gone to doors when I collected petition signatures and when I came out to start actually door knocking. And I would ask them, do you know who your council person is? The answer would be no, or if I heard her name. I would also ask the question, how long have you lived here? And there are residents who have lived here 12, 15, 20 years who have never had their door knocked on by their council person.
Wow.
And ladies and gentlemen, you are watching Speaking Truth to Power on WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world, streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Please follow, share, like, and subscribe. And if you would like to become an advertiser or a sponsor, please email us at WJZZCoolTVofficial@gmail.com.
Now, let me ask you something, Mikhail. You just made me think of something when you said a lot of people don't even know who their elected official is or haven't met them or think they've heard their name. Do you and the incumbent plan on doing any debates?
I would love to. There is an organization in Pontiac called Pontiac United who has been holding candidate forums for the mayor's race, and they are the main people doing the election work, other than Oakland Ford, who Oakland Ford is handling a lot of the voter registration, community wellness drives, like make sure people have resources. And Pontiac United does that as well, but this year they've really been focusing on like the election-based work, making sure people go out to vote. They know who's running for office, knows about them, and they're doing a candidate debate. Now, they will be letting some people speak at the upcoming debate from council races during the mayor's debate. Mm-hmm. But there'll also be like a couple of community events to have the people who are running for office come out. Will they turn into debates? Hopefully we have a couple of them, because the thing is, luckily for me, a debate helps the challenger, especially against a person who has to defend their record of doing next to nothing. And actually being able to, battle out these ideas and what someone wants to accomplish versus what someone has accomplished and is going to attempt to accomplish further. But it puts people on display. It's kind of very difficult to lie to constituents who have had to deal with you for 12 years and you've done nothing, or you've taken the accomplishments of local organizers and local parents in your area and claim them as your own. You're going to get blasted. Let's be real.
Right.
So I would love a debate.
Well, and then you have some that are just so arrogant that they feel that, oh, I don't have to debate you. Who are you? And
Yeah,
it's like,
which works out in my favor too.
right. Well, and I think that's really ridiculous too, to be so arrogant that you feel as though that the candidate is beneath you. That really says something about that person's personality. You know?
Right. Well, you know what, Michael? I'm thinking I just have another one of my great ideas. How about if we reach out to your campaign and your opponent's campaign, and we can actually do in your area, we can actually do remote, come to you guys, and see about a debate.
I
I mean,
mean,
we would be
I
willing
would
to
love
Why
watch
people
it.
can come here? Why not
Well,
have
well,
them come here and
well, I
to the
figure if
studio
we
and do
if
the
we
debate?
actually go to Pontiac, the people who are actually voting can actually show up. We can do this outside, social distancing and remote. And
yeah,
then that way you are actually confronted with the people in your area. And there is no running and there is no hiding. You know, you can't be on a screen and saying, "Oh, I didn't hear that. My earpiece is like not," because I've actually seen that lately. "Oh,
yeah,
my earpiece. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that," knowing full well you did. So that's why I offered the remote. I mean, we would be willing to look at both of the talk to both of the campaigns and see, a date and time, and maybe an organization in your community would also sponsor us, and we could come there and do a remote debate where the community can actually come out. We're not on screen like this, or you're not here because we're actually in Detroit, and you
yeah,
guys are actually in Pontiac. So the people who actually live in Pontiac can come and sit down and walk up to a mic on our show and ask these questions.
yeah. I mean, I would love that because
Okay.
also because that's the key thing is being bringing it to the community. When you have people who are so disenfranchised with the current system, some of them just simply don't care. But by giving that ease of access, like, no, we're doing this in your community. You can come ask these questions yourself. Walk down the street and do it. It makes it so much easier.
Okay, you know what? We will definitely reach out. The show will reach out to your campaign manager and to your opponent's campaign manager. And if your opponent chooses not to show up, we'll just do the debate with you.
Yeah, it's gonna be like one of those. It was what John Ossoff and David Perdue where that happened, where David
Oh,
Perdue
yeah.
decided to not show up, and like they kept panning over to the empty podium.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
we had that before when Coleman A. Young Jr. was running for mayor. Mike Duggan didn't show up, so they just had to do it with Coleman. So that happened. We only have a few more minutes before we close out. Mikhail, you have 2 minutes. What would you like for our audience to know?
Well, first of all, if you do stuff in your local community, keep doing it. Be the activist and the organizer that your area needs, because we all need that. In relations to me, my name is Mikhail Goodman. I'm running for Pontiac City Council in District 3. If you like the things that I said, or you want to know more, find my website at www.mikhailforpontiac, MIKALFORPONTIAC.com. Follow me on Facebook at Mikhail for Pontiac, same way. And then if you ever want to, volunteer or donate, all of that's available on the website. And I guess that's really it.
all
I
right.
haven't got my closing thing down yet.
You know what,
That was
Michael?
good.
Thank you so very much. I wish I lived in Pontiac because just from the things you said are things I'm interested in. I would vote for you. And we will be talking with your campaign. And just to let people know, we will be coming to Pontiac very soon. And we will be doing a live debate, whether both of the candidates show up or not. If neither one of you decide to show up, I guess people in Pontiac will know who we are. So if you guys
Good for you.
decide you're not going to do it, then Panji and I will become very famous in Pontiac. So because we will be there.
We will, and we're going to bring organizers with us to come to this debate as well, because I know people in Pontiac just as Denise does.
Mhm.
So we're going to bring community leaders out that's going to ask very poignant questions to both you and the constituents. So we are looking forward to this event, and maybe we can do this in Washington and
Yeah, maybe it's
Wayne
something we'll
as
start
well.
doing. You will be the lead for this, Mikkel. Thank you very much because you talking about them not being able to answer, just writing on what they've done and not showing up. You know what? That's not okay anymore. And Mikkel, we'd like to thank you very much. We will be speaking with you and your campaign manager soon. And to everyone who is watching, Thank you for watching Speaking Truth to Power, the new progressive voices of the Midwest. You can catch us again on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, or Twitter. Sign, subscribe, follow us, and you will be hearing more from Mikkel later. Thank you, everyone. Have a great Saturday.
Goodbye.
Have a great weekend.